We've been on quite the whirlwind tour today, where we were just north in Westchester County, and now we're coming down south again on the last leg of our journey to southern Connecticut, Branford, New Haven, and Stamford, where there is a lot going on, and one of our own homegrown semaphore here from Mount Sinai with a very exciting story. So you want to just introduce yourselves and your institutions, and then Sho, you can kick it off.
Sure. Sho Islam, Director of Business Development with Advanced CT, leading the life sciences sector there.
Hi, I'm Chris Ostap. I am the Managing Director for JLL Connecticut.
Usha Pillai, I'm a biostrategist for EDC New Haven.
Isaac Rowe, Chief Financial Officer for Semaphore.
I think you're muted, John.
I'm John Soderstrom. I'm the former Managing Director of the Office of Cooperative Research at Yale University.
Thank you. Do you want to kick it off, Sho?
No, just glad to be here again. Seeing the cooperation that's going on between the states is really fantastic because, as I said earlier, we can certainly compete, but cooperating also works to make our pies bigger so we all can have a win-win situation. Maybe I would just pass it on to John to get us started. Just what he's seeing, from Yale and the area there as it relates to R&D and what we've seen, especially over the last 5 years, to get us kind of started and where things stand right now.
Yeah, we've heard that research is the engine. Go ahead, John.
No, happy to do that. The thing that many of you probably aren't aware of is just the level of activity that actually is happening up in the Connecticut area. We may be a small state, we may be halfway between Boston and New York, but there's a tremendous amount of activity that's been occurring. But I want to put this in perspective. First of all, people need to recognize that Yale is the fourth largest recipient of NIH funding in the life sciences. That makes us among the 5 leading academic medical centers in the world. And the productivity of the faculty that we have is actually quite breathtaking. I want to put it in this perspective. Over the last 5 years, we've created 60 new venture capital backed. Now, when I say new startups that are venture capital backed, I'm talking about companies that have actually raised professional venture capitalists, not 2 faculty members who raised their hand and asked for an option to their patents. These are actually professionally backed companies. So there have been 60 of those. Those companies, just to put it in perspective, have raised over $3.7 billion. That was billion dollars in professional venture capital. Probably more importantly, 6 of those have actually had initial public offerings on NASDAQ or the New York Stock Exchange. So the thing that's interesting right now, that's probably the most important for you, is that we currently do not have adequate lab space available for our startup companies. In calendar year 2021, we've already launched 10 new venture-backed startups that have raised $175 million in venture capital. By the way, one of those is actually out raising another 100 million on top of the 40 that they originally raised in their Series A. And we're having a difficult time actually finding space for those places. Now, we have a lot of future plans that are going on. There's a brand new development that broke ground earlier this year at 101 College Street that Winstanley Enterprises is building that will add another 500,000 square feet. But the 1.5 million square feet of lab space that's been added over the last 5 years is fully occupied at this point. And we have a demand that's currently somewhere north of 250,000 square feet that's unrealized. So that just sort of sets the table for what's going on. And that's just New Haven, by the way. And of a town of 140,000 people, not too shabby.
Exactly. Thank you, John. That was a great way to start it off. Very strong.
And maybe just to piggyback off of that, talking about real estate and kind of the trends you're seeing there, Chris, as kind of leading Connecticut for JLL. Can you give us a little bit of insight?
For sure. I mean, to echo what John just said, we really thought coming into 2021, and John will correct me if I get this wrong, but coming into 2021, we really thought we would be talking about the supply. We had 101 College being announced for 550,000 square feet of Class A office space right in its center of our life science district in the South Campus of Yale next to the hospital. So ideal location, right next to Alexion's former building. And then up in the northern side of town.
By the way, that's not
Here we go.
Alexion's former building. They're still in that building.
That's right. Thank you. They just to the north side of campus in Science Park, right? So one of the buildings there is a 160,000 square foot former Class A office building that's being redeveloped for lab and use. And then in between, right in the heart of downtown, is a former Class B office building that's also deciding that, Class B office space is not too desirable anymore in small towns. So they're going through a lab conversion. So beginning in 2021, we were thinking, okay, there's going to be a lot of talk about supply. Those buildings are going to be fully leased. I can tell you Winchester Works is, that's the building up in Science Park, 160,000 square feet. We are within probably the end of the month going to have fully committed leases for the rest of the square footage. So by a handful, Therapeutics, BSL2, local companies coming in from a range of 10 to 15,000 square feet each, one big one at 60. But nonetheless, and to John's point, now we're looking at the one in the middle, that one in the center of town. As fast as they can put it online, it's being leased. And then Carter Winstanley's building, the beautiful 550,000 square feet in our epicenter. By the time he probably puts the final piece of steel up top in mid-2023, he's going to be spoken for as well. So we're underdeveloped, for sure. We're not as nimble, I think, as entrepreneurs. I could safely say spec development in central Connecticut is a four-letter word, so we don't do that. But clearly there is a need for spec development to catch that what we call graduation space tenants. So for sure, come on up, take a look.
Great. Appreciate that.
And just kind of also piggybacking on that, as far as New Haven is concerned, Usha, what are some of the support infrastructure that are in place there that's happening?
Yeah, so to piggyback on what you were saying, Chris, and what John already set the stage, the location where 100 College and 101 College is, originally it was a expressway, and which was never completed. And that was in the 1950s. And so it was the highway to nowhere. So the downtown crossing was a very purposeful project that's still ongoing. So it's in phase 2, phase 3. So this enabled us to recover some of the land, reclaim some of the land. It provides some tax base as well. But as a result of this, we have Alexion, which was recently acquired, as you know, by AstraZeneca, is housed there. And they continue to do the research. I know there are some conversations about Alexion moved out of Connecticut. That's not true. They are still there. And then 101 College being built. We still have a point that both John and Chris mentioned. We still have a lack of incubator space. So we need that startup space. So many things that the city has been thinking about and doing and partnering with the companies as well as Yale is to create that infrastructure to support our companies. So the Governor's Workforce Council is an initiative that the Chamber of New Haven is working with all of our companies. And there are 3 priorities that they've come up with. And those are infrastructure, no surprise, given the supply-demand equation not matching up. We also have initiatives for talent. We have a lot of talent. But as the company growth that we are seeing, we want to be ahead of the curve and make sure we have sufficient talent. And then branding. I think about Connecticut as the best kept secret in terms of the life sciences, and we don't want to be secretive about it. So we need to be sure and get the word out and let folks know about what we have. So that's from that aspect. And then the other piece that I want to mention is we talked a lot about earlier today about how to engage the community. And so the New Haven Innovation Collaborative is one of the entrepreneurial centers. There are 4 within the state. Money comes in from CT Next organization. And so this is where we enable our community and our entrepreneurs to come together and cultivate much more robust engagement with the community. So that's been very, very successful. It's smaller dollars. We're looking at $10 million over 5 years. But it has had tremendous impact for what we have today. So more to come for sure.
That's great. And Isaac being Semaphore, which is a perfect example of regional companies at its best, having experience in New York City and the greater Branford, and then of course Stamford. What's it been like doing business across the 2 states?
Well, maybe you could start with your story a
Yeah,
little bit.
sure,
Eric
and we'll
Schott
leave it there.
was the lead at the Mount Sinai with the New York Genome Center when I was working on that. And so we worked together on that. And then, of course, he spun Semaphore out of Mount Sinai, which is really exciting.
Yeah, that's right. And thanks for having us. So Semaphore is a healthcare company focused on bringing AI and genomic technologies into routine healthcare. And as many of you may know, there have been incredible advances in those disciplines, but for anyone who's been to the doctor lately, you probably wonder, when is it going to come to my neighborhood? And so a lot of what we're trying to do is to translate all these advances into day-to-day care. And the genesis for that idea was our founder, Eric Schott, who was this visionary guy that I happened to know in my prior life. And he had gone to Sinai almost, I think, 7 or 8 years ago now to build up the genomics effort. In that effort, conceived of this company, Semaphore, which was born within the healthcare system, went on to raise a couple rounds of venture funding led by the likes of Blackstone and BlackRock and Deerfield. And that effort spun out the company ultimately in 2017. And earlier this year led to a public offering. So we're now a public company through a SPAC transaction. And so now we are today, just for rough numbers, about 1,100 people strong with about $2 billion market cap. Last year, revenue about $180 million, and from a real estate footprint, about 200,000 square feet of space, half of that in a lab setting, the other half in office space, and a decent chunk of that is actually still here in New York City, which I'm happy to talk about. But the majority of our operations are in Connecticut. We're a Connecticut company, but still with very strong New York City roots, and expect to remain that way for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, so that's interesting because one of the reasons New York, increased its focus on growing this industry is because it was losing all of its companies. So maybe you can just talk a little bit about the process you guys went through to find your way to Connecticut and what you've got left in New York, maybe what the relationship is there, and then describe, you're in Stamford and you're in Branford, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so.
Yeah, so if you tease apart a little bit, like what is this company? What do we do? There are, of the 1,100 people, several hundred laboratorians in a large facility doing cutting-edge genomics testing, and that's an effort that is capital intensive and requires a large physical space. And so Connecticut, we were really glad to partner with them both at the state and local levels to find a space that worked in Stamford and be a part of the revitalization in this area called Harbor Point. So a lot of our physical presence is dependent on space. Now, having said that, we have also a huge amount of talent, almost 200 people who are essentially computational biologists. What is that? It's people who are really good with math and science at the same time, and those people, many of them are based in what you would consider to be conventional office space, and then on top of that, we have over 100 people that are essentially software engineers. And those people in particular are of the stripe that you might expect from a Google or another tech company, and as we thought about building the franchise over time, it was really clear to us that strategically, we need to maintain a very strong footprint in New York City. That's where the talent is. And as much as we'd love to talk about science, it's also about talent. And for us, having that access, being in Manhattan, in fact, we're to the neighborhood really focused in sort of the Silicon Alley, the Union Square area, because we want to be able to draw people from Brooklyn, from New Jersey, from Westchester, all over. So it's really a very focused effort from us to be present here. And then, of course, we've got our ties with Sinai, which will never go away. And that's another group of people with whom we interface regularly.
So where is your office in Manhattan?
Yeah, it's 200 Park Ave South. So it's right above the, I think, former Petco in Union Square. And so we're actually right now evaluating space for next year. That lease expires in 2022, and we are, intending to stay in Union Square, but trying to do that while juggling the same things that a lot of companies are juggling, which is we are growing, but how much space do we need, and hoteling and all these fun topics, are front and center for me, because we're trying to skate to where the puck is going here a little bit, but our growth plans are pretty ambitious.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Very interesting story. I'm sure there must be some questions from our audience. This is our last panel, your last chance to kind of pick the brains of the experts here. Everybody's shy today.
Just curious, Chris, if you could talk a little bit about what are renters, or at least what are they asking for, or what are the rents going for?
So for the Class A buildings in downtown New Haven, this is going to shock some of the brokers here in this room today. So, so in a brand new construction at 101 College, which is in the process of being built, we're talking low mid 40s triple net, gets you $150, $125 per foot work letter as well. Wow. So, yeah. So pretty low compared to really anywhere else on the planet. But up in the other buildings that are being redone, it's still in the high 30s, mid high 30 triple net. Mm-hmm. And there's variable degrees of that. You can go out to Branford and get second or third or fourth generation lab space that's been lived in and picked over a few times. You can definitely, as we see some of our incubator folks trying to find that. But the good news is all that space is full. Mm-hmm. And it's been full now for all of 2021. And as I said earlier, as soon as space comes online, it gets chewed up right away. So as folks were waiting for their bigger space to be built out in another building, the space they're leaving has already been grabbed by one of the existing tenants.
In fact, the Pierce Lab, if you want to talk about Pierce Lab.
You go ahead, Pierce Lab.
So proximity to Yale is one of the things that it was absolutely important for all of the entrepreneurs. And Pierce Lab had extra space. And they have Vivarius space, so they converted that space to an incubator space. Mm-hmm. And there's about, I want to say 15,000 square feet of space. Right. There's a waiting list already, and it should be coming online this month. Mm-hmm. So that's how quickly the space is spoken for. We also get, being in the EDC, actually, in fact, Semaphore, when they first looked at Connecticut, we were the ones, EDC New Haven was the one that took them to Branford, because we couldn't get them a space in New Haven. They wanted to be in New Haven, proximity to the train station. But 454 was exiting from that building in Branford, and the layout was perfect for what Semaphore was looking for. And Eric loved that spot, and so that's how they decided to come in. But I lost my train of thought where I was going with it, but yes.
Well, Lucia, while you try to recover your train of thought, one of the things I think that people might not notice is that the second, third, and fourth generation DNA sequencing technology all came out of Branford, Connecticut, all developed by Jonathan Rothberg. You just mentioned 454 as one of those companies. But we have been the home of DNA sequencing for the last 20 years, and I think it's something that people don't fully recognize, the level of innovation that is going on.
Completely agree, John. And I think that is continuing even now with the amount of growth that Jonathan has done in Guilford with some of the newer technologies. Correct. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And I'll say, that innovation has kind of come full circle, because Semaphore runs, I think, the second largest fleet of sequencers in a clinical production sense on the Eastern Seaboard. It's really MIT and us that are doing the most clinical genetic testing out there on these technologies. So we're really supportive of any innovation that can be in and around us. We're active consumers of it, and we actually, as part of our relationship with Sinai, continue to look at what are the great technologies coming. How can we work together with our combined sort of interests and purchasing power to take advantage of those innovations. So whenever we can be supportive of the local ecosystem, we want to be.
Well, that's a great note to end on. So you can see how much is going on in Connecticut. So, I mean, it's just really amazing, at least it was for me, when I started to put this program together and thinking regionally and how do we do this. We have ready partners in all of the different geographic areas, and so this is just the beginning of a discussion about how we think more strategically to attract some additional federal resources to our region and to continue to build the kinds of facilities that we need to spawn companies like a Semaphore and support John in getting the companies out of the academic centers and into commercialization. So we're going to dispense with the conclusion today because we need to end on time, and it's 3:10, so we're ending right on time. And we have a reception until 4 o'clock, so please stay and enjoy. Thank you for coming, and thank you for being with us.
Thank you for having us.